Hey everybody, I want to show you how to repurpose some fruits or vegetables, especially greens, if they're starting to get a little soft or soggy or wilted in your fridge. So for the purposes of this demonstration, most of the things I have here are actually pretty fresh because we just bought them, and we tend to go through our greens really quickly so they don't get really soft. But if they do, blending them into a cool, refreshing smoothie is such a good repurposing. You won't notice that the crisp texture is gone, and it really doesn't matter if they're a little wilted. They'll perk up a bit with some cold, cool water and ice. So if you have things like romaine lettuce that are getting wilted or brown or soft, good to use them here. The same thing with spinach. This tends to get really mushy quickly in the refrigerator. So to help prevent that, I like to put a paper towel or a cloth inside the bag or the container that I purchased the greens in to help absorb some of the moisture. And I do that both with spinach and with kale or collard greens when we buy them. So that does help a little bit, but if you don't use them fast enough and you choose not to steam them ahead of time or cook them and then freeze them, even if they're a little wilted or soggy, we can use them in a smoothie here. So I've got kale. This is curly kale. You could use lacinato if you prefer that. I have spinach, romaine. This is some older parsley that was in my refrigerator, so bring out your fresh herbs here as well. I might toss in a little bit of the cilantro in the fridge that's also starting to get a little yellow. So good way to repurpose wilting herbs. I have fresh apple. Again, if your apples start to get soft on the outside, they're bruised, good way to use them here. You could use green apple. This, I can't remember what this is. I got to take off the skin and wash it. Pink Lady or Honeycrisp, I think. I'm going to use citrus. Limes and lemons stay in the refrigerator for quite a while, or even outside the refrigerator, because they've got a tough skin and they don't go bad quite as quickly as some other fresh fruits do. So you'll notice that it starts to get soft or brown on the outside after a while. So a good way to repurpose some older citrus if you have it. I'm using ginger. This is something that I notice if I don't use quickly, the ends where I snip off the portion I'm using tend to grow either mold or they get really brown and crusty and start to look bad. So if you're not using ginger quickly, another good way to use it in a smoothie here. I have fresh cucumber. The same deal with cucumber. It gets soft and mushy, especially if it's wrapped in that plastic and you haven't let it breathe and it starts to sort of get soft in its packaging. Perfect way to repurpose it here. So this one's pretty fresh, but again, anything that's getting wilted or soggy, we can use and repurpose. The one caveat I would say during this time is to avoid anything that's noticeably moldy or has some kind of contaminant that might compromise your immune system. I think we're all on some high alert right now, and normally I would say cut around the bad portion, but if something is truly rotten or moldy, we're not going to use it in this application. I want you all to stay well. So I'm going to use the ingredients in front of me to make a green smoothie. This is going to be very low sugar, low carbohydrate, really fresh and crisp, something that you can keep in the refrigerator all week if you chose to. You could put it in mason jars or drink it fresh that day. I'm just going to add filtered cold water and a little bit of ice. You could use coconut water here if you have it. That's a nice source of some natural minerals and electrolytes, and it's going to give the overall end smoothie a little bit more sweetness. So I'm going to add these ingredients, blend them up, and we'll give it a taste. You can do any variation of the things you see in front of me. If you want to add something like celery, that would be great too. If you have old bananas in the freezer and you want to sweeten this up and add some additional carbohydrate, you could certainly use that here too. But the purpose of my green smoothie today is to show you that you can reuse things that are starting to get a little yellow, a little brown, or soft in the refrigerator and make them into something fresh and tasty. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding to my blender. I already have water and ice in the base. I've sliced my cucumber. Make sure you're washing everything before you use it. I tend to wash things nowadays before I put them in my refrigerator. So a lot of this is pre-washed. Greens that come bagged and washed are a great option here. You don't have to wash them again. So this is one small cucumber I'm putting in there, and I'm going to start with just a few of these ingredients first, all the heavy things, blend those well, and then slowly add some of the greens. So I'm going to go ahead and just chunk my apple up a little bit, peel my ginger, and blend those few things together first. Here's my ginger. So I started with a piece that was about the size of my pinky finger. I peeled it and I roughly chopped it to fit in about a tablespoon. I'm going to start with this much and see how strong it is. Ginger is very pungent and peppery. It can be really spicy if you use too much. So I'm going to add this to start and we'll try it and see. So I'll add that to my blender, pop the lid on, and we'll start to blend these. I have some big ice cubes in the bottom of this, so it might be a little bit loud. So here's the first blend. It's pretty watery. We're gonna make sure that we blend the rest of the greens really well so that you don't get a really fibrous texture when you sip. So if you have a high-speed blender, make sure that you blend really until it's smooth. I'm gonna go ahead and add my lemon juice, my romaine, the spinach, kale, and my herbs, and blend them all up. Let that go for a while. You want it to be really nice and smooth. So I'm all blended here, and you can continue to blend a little bit, but it does warm up as you do that. A Vitamix especially tends to get a little bit hot the longer you have it run. So I'm gonna cool this in the refrigerator for a few minutes before I drink it. But I wanted to point out, notice how this is a little bit pulpy. That's all of the fiber and the skin from the vegetables that we added to this smoothie. Instead of the way you would normally drink a green juice that's fiber-free, it's really smooth, it's the consistency of a water typically because you're just juicing the vegetable. In the case of a smoothie, when we're blending the whole thing, we get that added fiber and cellulose from the vegetable, which is really good for your gut. It also helps to slow the absorption of the sugars that you have in naturally occurring fruits and vegetables. So I always like to opt for a smoothie version when you can. There's nothing wrong with the green juice. Plenty of good vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, healthy part of your diet. But if you don't have a juicer at home, a smoothie is still a really good option. So you'll notice it's a little bit thicker. I'm gonna cool this in the refrigerator for just a bit. It tends to get warm when I have it on high speed, but I hope you enjoy. This is not super sweet, but I think this is helpful to intermix your sweet beverages with less sweet ones so that our body doesn't get accustomed to an overly sweet flavor. So add your fresh herbs and your greens, your peppery ginger, and drink something that is not super sweet. There you go. A good for you, fiber-rich, very green beverage using vegetables that might be a little soft or brown. Remember that we can repurpose greens and crisp them up and make them something pretty tasty by blending them in a smoothie. I'm gonna pop this in the refrigerator, but I hope you're well today. Enjoy.